saw CARTUSIA twice, and it was very interesting for many reasons. It was interesting. First of all, it was a beautiful day, which helped a lot. And so you walk through this amazing structure, this church, a monastery, but a really big one. And you walk right through it, and then there you are in the middle of it with this beautiful green space and trees and a court. You know, you can see the whole thing around, and then a tent, a white tent, like the kind that, a canopy, like the kind people have for their parties and things. And the guys, 4 of them, have all their equipment there. So you think, oh, what's this? And one of the things I'd like to say, that the 2 times I saw it, that especially the second time, watching the audience was as interesting as the performance, and I'll mention that in a minute. So anyway, then the 4 guys are there, and it's with his guitar, and he starts by playing the guitar, but it's not in a traditional guitar way. He's just making some sound with his guitar. And Marjorie is not yet present because he makes an interesting entrance. Was there, Mila is there. And it starts with making some sound with the guitar, which did attract people. They came, and they're all thinking, well, it's going to be some music that's going to get played. And then suddenly, this is quite effective, suddenly you hear a voice coming out of one of the trees. And I think that that's a very nice idea, because people suddenly were saying, oh, there's things happening. And you saw people looking around. And then suddenly you hear a guy scream, shout. Now, I don't know what the word was that he shouted. I didn't get it either time, but it really did get everybody's attention. I mean, you think at that point, that's when people realize something is happening. And in fact, it has a little bit of an edge of, you're not sure whether it's somebody who's in the performance or it's just some crazy guy that's going to scream at these guys. And that's kind of good, because it's like, oh, they're in trouble now because they're in a church and they're, you know, messing around. So then it's of course, and he comes striding forward, and then the 4 of them start laughing, and then they continue, and you realize, oh, okay, it's part of it. And then they do quite a number of things after that. It's kind of one gesture, one moment after another. And I do understand that everything that they've chosen to do is a response to what they've learned about the location. They've spent a certain amount of time learning, getting some stories, understanding what the place used to be, and sort of just soaking up the atmosphere of the place. And so they've made set pieces that express that. Tells a very interesting story about a monk, which gets people's attention. And also sings. He sings very well. He sings very well in English, in fact. And he sings a Brian Ferry song, which has very nice lyrics. And also, the instrumentation is environmentalized, meaning the Marjorie has a keyboard that he's loaded with different things. That at one point he uses it. He goes around. Not only do they play this kind of blues vamp for CARTUSIA to sing at the microphone, but also at one point he walks around playing wind noises off of it, which I thought was quite nice, and I didn't pick up on that the first time. And also does an acoustic gesture with a microphone cord, which is nice because even though it's a small sound, you can actually hear it. You don't hear it at first, but you actually can hear it. He also uses the keyboard at another point, and he plays, and that's nice. He stays pretty much under the tent, but he's using instrumentation as well. So there's a certain mixture of music, and the thing about the music is that the people who were watching it, now let's talk about the audience a little bit. The people were various. There were different kinds of people in the audience, and maybe I'll just talk about the types. There was one type of person that was part of a group that had come to look at the monastery, and they were completely confused. In fact, they were resistant. In the second performance, they were talking through the whole thing, and people had to tell them to stop. And that kind of group was the worst audience member, because they would sort of stop and look at what the guys were doing, and then once it got to them, it seemed a little bit weird to them, they kind of took it as permission to turn around and walk away, which is a kind of closed-minded kind of person. There was a second kind of person who was someone who, no matter what age, they were kind of smirking at it, the way people do in performance, where they're kind of going, looking around and feeling like they should be acting amused by it, or people will think they're crazy if they don't have a smirky look on their face, sort of like this. You know, there were people like that. Okay, all right, fine. They were a little less hopeless, those people, you know, because you thought that they were afraid to like it, but that they sort of did. And then there was a third kind of person, which were mostly a bit younger. And these were people who actually just gave themselves permission to enjoy it and rather like the different things that the guys were doing. So what I wanted was to somehow find a way to let those people have more space in the place. Because the people in the second performance, the people in the pastel double knit clothing that were practically with walkers and stuff, they were really acting very badly. And it's just a lifetime of rejecting everything that they don't know already, so never mind that. A couple of other highlights were, I like the story that CARTUSIA tells them. Also, there's another thing that they had come up with a list of different aspects of silence, and I suppose that the location, which I'll call the monastery, has many different colors of silence associated with it. And of course, when you work for several days, or I guess about 10 days in a place that's silent, you become aware of all that silence, the different colors of silence. But then you add the people, and the people take the silence away. Then you have to respond to the silence differently. But I did like very much that started reading off the different kinds, the silence of this, the silence of that, the silence of the economy, the silence of, and that he ran through the structure, the building, and shouted it, and so that you had the opportunity to, the audience had the opportunity to hear what it was for his voice to come out of the structure. In the second performance, there were a lot more people, but there were a lot of people that were not paying attention, and so that hearing him was interrupted a little bit for me. I didn't get to enjoy that as much because the people were just so milling around and turning their backs and confused and all that. They also did a gesture of crawling around the circle where the fountain used to be on their elbows, which to me looked like they were being doing penance. I can't say the word suddenly. Doing penance, as well as I was told that there was a story about measuring things with the elbows, but it was also just they were dragging themselves around, kind of like large caterpillars or worms. And in fact, I did see a caterpillar right before up against the wall, which that has, you know, no meaning whatsoever. And so they did that, and people, I think that was a moment, typical moment, where the people who wanted to be able to turn around and walk away, they did, because that was like, okay, it's weird, which is too bad for them. People that do that. They also, who was mostly doing sounds and playing instrument, actually came out and did an insane dance, which, because I know I enjoyed that quite a bit. I've never seen him do that before, and I'll probably never see him do that again. And one of the things I noticed when he was doing it the first time was he seemed to be chewing gum while he was doing that, which I thought was an interesting gesture, because he was saying he just didn't care, which I thought was kind of subtle. Maybe he was only chewing gum because he was chewing gum. I don't know. But usually when somebody's chewing gum, it usually says, I don't care. You know, so he was like doing it. It's kind of like doing something with no effort. And then the second time he did it, I didn't notice he was chewing gum. don't know. It's a mystery. Let's see what else. And they did a thing where they, I think it was based on, you told me it's based on the guide's description of the location, and that they were saying, you are this and you are that, and you are big, but you are small. You were old and you were young. And that was kind of interesting. I find myself wondering what people think that was. And because they were pointing at us, that would get people's attention. Frankly, I mean, what I was asking myself while I was watching it, what does it really mean for 4 guys in a tent to be in a courtyard? For 4 guys to cavort around in a courtyard, you know, separately with separate sound sources and all of that. What does that mean? Well, in one way, it could be very disconcerting to the public, and it could be kind of exciting. Or in another way, it could be like you're at one of those medieval fairs that they do, like at the cloisters in New York or something, where you just, you know, they're dressed as jesters and you just ignore them. And that isn't what they were doing. They were kind of like regular guys doing this.